Alright guys, welcome back. Got something a little different for you tonight. I went back and forth on whether I was going to do a video on this or not, and for good reason. But I decided we're going to do it. So what I've got is I got a gun barrel here. You can see it's threaded on the back. This screws into the action, and then there's the muzzle. So I've got to thread this, and this is for my personal gun because I've got a suppressor. And I want to be able to thread the suppressor on the end of the barrel because it's just not that fun hunting without a suppressor. I've done it a lot, but technology's gotten a lot better over the last few years. Suppressors are amazing. They'll save your hearing. My right ear is a testimony to that. And so I usually don't go hunting anymore without a suppressor on my firearm. Now the reason I wasn't going to do a video on this is because out of all the videos I've done, the video that gets the most hate is the pistol slide video I did a long time ago, where I machined the slide so that it would accept a red dot sight. And I have had nothing but negativity from that because it didn't go very smooth. I was able to get the job done. The customer still shoots the pistol to this day, but I've taken nothing but heat from that video. I guess maybe it soured me a little bit over the machining gun parts thing. You know, it seems like there's so many people out there that want to tear you down and belittle you for making a mistake. Well, guess what? It happens. It happens a lot. In a lot of ways, the only way you're going to improve and get better is when you make those mistakes. And I know that because I've made plenty of them. And most of the time, when you retain something, it's because you made a mistake and you think to yourself, I'm never going to do that again. So I decided, you know what? We haven't done a machining video in a long time, and I think this is something that may help somebody somewhere. If nothing else, it will help people understand the simplified process of how threads are machined into something cylindrical like this. This process that we're going to use is the same process for a bolt or a pin or anything like that you're going to machine. There are a few things that you need to know. So the first things that you need to know when you're machining threads into something is you have to know a few things. The first thing you need to know is the depth. How far down do you need to thread? So you got to get your depth. The next thing you need to know is your major diameter. And I'll put a drawing up on the screen and show you guys what I'm talking about here. You've got to have a major diameter and a minor diameter. So the major diameter would be the outside diameter, so the largest diameter, the major diameter of the threads. The minor diameter is, just like it says, the minor diameter of the threads. So it's the bottom or in the valley of the threads. The other thing that you need to know is what thread pitch you need to machine. So I know, because I have a suppressor here, plus I've already done my research, the size that this suppressor takes is 5/8 24. So that's 5/8 diameter, 24 threads per inch. That's how it is in America anyway. I know that we've got to have 24 threads per inch. That's important when you're machining threads, so remember that. So I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to get the barrel in the chuck here on the lathe. I'm going to get everything set up. I've got to put some copper on the jaws to protect the barrel because I don't want to jack up the finish on the barrel. So I'll go ahead and get this all set up, and then when we're ready to start, I'll come back to you. All right, so I've got a few pieces of just really thin copper here. And if you don't have soft jaws or aluminum jaws for your chuck, you can use stuff like this to protect what you're putting in the jaws, because they can be pretty wicked. So it's always good to be gentle when you're doing this kind of thing, especially when it's a customer's barrel. Luckily for me, this is my barrel, so if I screw it up, then I'm not screwing up a customer's barrel. And trust me, sometimes these types of jobs are quite stressful. All right, so I've got the barrel in the chuck. I've got my live center in place here. I've checked this. We're within 1/1000th of an inch, so that's going to be good enough for threading the barrel. I know we need to cut this down 600 thousandths of an inch. I've got an old pair of calipers here. It's the only pair that I use for this, but I'm gonna mark 600 thou just for a reference. I also use my DRO, but I like to mark it with this. And it gives me a line, and I'll show you. Okay, so hopefully you can see that line that's scribed right there. See that line? So now I know how far to go. I just use that as a backup. Even though I use my DRO, that's a DRO. Even though I use my DRO, I still like to scribe a line so I know, just as a fail-safe, don't go past that point. Now the next thing I need to know before I start cutting is how deep to go. Now I don't want to cut any deeper than the major diameter of the threads. I know how far to go lengthwise. Now I need to know how far down to cut. After looking at the drawing, I know not to go any further than 5980, which is still quite a bit. About 150 thou. So I'm just going to go slow, take my time, and slowly work my way down and get as close as I can to 5980. Okay, 625 thousandths. That's what we're going for here. Okay, that's 0. 125 thou. That's what we need to take off. Okay, here we go. We're going to go 50 thou. Take another 50 thou. Okay, there's 600 thou. Okay, we're good. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is cut our relief. I'll show you guys on the drawing what I mean relief, but there's a slot on the back side up against this shoulder. The purpose of the relief is so that when you thread this, you can back out the tool and it gives you complete thread from point A to point B, because you can't get right up against this shoulder. But if there's a relief, then it's not going to hang things up if you don't get right up against that. So you have to cut that relief. So now we'll go ahead and swap our tooling out to cut that relief. So here's the tool I'm using to cut the relief. You can see it's just a square carbide. So I'm going to put that in the lathe here. Okay, so we're ready to cut our relief. So when you cut a relief like this, with this kind of bit, you want to slow it way down. So I got my speed slowed way down to like 60 RPMs. Okay. So I'm going to touch off here. We've got to take about 40 thou off. And I'm going to use oil. Just going to use cutting oil. Now I'm going to check my dimensions. Okay, we got about 8 thou left to go. Alright, we've got a relief cut, we've got our depth cut. So now we're ready to swap out the tooling. I'll go ahead and grab my threading insert and we'll put it in the tool post and we'll see if we can get this threaded. Okay, so here's our threading tool. It's a pretty standard threading tool. This is for right-handed threads. Okay, it's always a good idea to run it in and check and make sure it's perpendicular to the part, meaning elevation wise. Well, guess what, guys? I guess you learn to roll with the punches. So I got this put in here. I checked it with the dial indicator and it's good. It's within 1,000th. It took me forever to get it, but I got it. And I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to check it after every pass to make sure it's not moving. It's hard because the barrel's tapered. It's good and tight now, and I don't think it's moving. but I had to do it that way because with the live center in here, I couldn't get my tool in there to thread it, so had to go this option. Alright, so every lathe should have a chart like this for threading. We know we need to be 24 threads per inch, so you go to the 24. Okay, now the machine, this will tell you what settings you need on the machine. So we need to be on number 6 for the threads per inch. We need to be in number 6, which it's a gear, so we need to move to number 6. Okay, then we need to be B, C. So B, we're in B there, and then we need to be C here. Sorry, I had to put the camera down. Okay, so now we're in C. And then I like to check 3 or 4 times to make sure I'm right. So 24 threads per inch. So we need to be in B, C, and then we're in number 6. So B, C, number 6. We'll lock that in. And then you can thread it at whatever speed you want. I always like to go pretty slow, especially for something like a gun barrel. I've got it set up pretty slow, and I'll show you the other thing I like to do before I just give her the onion. Alright, so the other thing I like to do is I've got this big fat Milwaukee marker, and what I'll do is I'll take the marker and I like to mark this. This is just like, you can buy dye for this, but the marker works just fine. Okay, so I mark it, and then what I'll do is I'll actually scribe the line. So, okay, so now I'm gonna have to engage this. I'm just gonna touch off here. Okay, so I've touched off. All right, so I think it's important that you guys see what's going on here. Okay, so I've got a thread dial here, and it's got 1 through 4 on it. I watch the thread dial. I like to engage it on the same number every time. I know you don't have to, but I like to, just because I've had certain lathes that I've used in the future where if something weird happens...
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious...
There might be more slop in one spot. I'm real particular about using one number, and I use the same number when I thread. It just avoids any mishaps that could happen with using a different number. I'm gonna go ahead and just run number 1, okay? And then I've got to engage that here. Okay, so I realize there's a lot of information here, and a lot of you aren't gonna understand it, but if I'm gonna explain this, I've got to explain this. So I've got my cross feed here. So this runs your Y travel, cross feed, okay? This is your compound. You actually use your compound to adjust and cut deeper as you thread. This needs to be set at 29 degrees. So I've changed this to 29 degrees. My tooling is square to the machine. And then I will actually touch off and I'll leave my Y handle or my cross feed at 0. And then I'll use this to adjust it to get my depth. So I know that's a lot of information. It probably doesn't make sense to a lot of you, but that's how I thread. Okay, so I'm going to touch off and I'm going to run a test pass, and then we'll see what it looks like on the gun barrel to see if our thread pitch is correct. Here we go. So I'm going to set 0 here, and then I'm just going to go in a couple thou so it scribes a line here. Okay. All right, now I've got to watch my lead screw here, and when I hit 1 on the thread dial, I'm going to engage this. Okay, and then I'm going to disengage the lathe when I get close. Hit the brake, and then I'll back this out where it's not going to touch, and then run it backwards. Okay, so I'm leaving it in gear. So now I'm going to run it backwards and go back. Okay, so hopefully you can see my line there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread gauge and check that. If you've never seen a thread gauge, this is what they look like. And you just got to find, so in our case, we got to find 24 TPI. 24. Okay. So then I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to check to make sure I really do have 24 TPI. If I don't, something's wrong and I've got to adjust my lathe. Sometimes you can go cross-eyed looking at this trying to get it right too, so take your time. Okay, so it is correct. Okay, so now I'm going to oil this up good, and then I'm going to go really slow here. So we're going to adjust our compound. I've got to go back into 0. I'm going to go ahead and 0 my compound, and I'm going to go 5 to 7 thou is what I've always been taught. Okay, here we go. I'll keep my foot on the brake, and then I'm going to disengage. Okay, stop that. It's looking good. So if I actually just slam my foot on the brake, it'll disengage the lathe and stop it right where I need to. So now I'll back it out with my feed, turn it in reverse, and run it backwards. And so then it's just a lot of this back and forth, 5 to 7 thousandths at a time until you get the threads cut. So I'll probably speed this part up, put it back in 0, turn up my dial another, make sure I keep it good and oiled up. Here we go. Okay, I think we're getting close here. I'm just gonna check that. There is some cleanup I like to do when I do get close. It's always good to check. And if it's too tight, you know you need to keep going. That's pretty snug. There's two things you can do. I've actually hit the bottom of my relief. I know that because when I get to the end of machining the threads, it's starting to leave a mark in the relief. And so this is tight enough that when I get this screwed on here, it's pretty tight. So what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna try to force that. You don't ever want to do that. So what I like to do is take some fine emery cloth and just polish the peaks on the threads. So this is some 240 grit. Okay, and I'm just being real gentle here. And then when you get done with this, you want to make sure that you clean it up. I will actually take some brake cleaner and just blast that a couple times. Take my air. Now I know that it's nice and clean now and there's not sand in the threads, so now I'm going to try it again. Ooh, it's still a little tight. Okay, it's still tight enough that I'm going to take one more pass, adjust my compound. So I'll go ahead and go back to 0. My compound should be good. We're going to oil this back up. Here we go. Okay, that's cutting good. Now back it off. Run backwards. Okay, that's looking good. Get this out of the way and try it again. Hopefully you can see there is a burr from where it was hitting the relief. Now we're going to try it again. Okay, that's feeling better. Oh yeah, that's feeling good. It's not too loose, but it's not too tight either. And as I go, it's getting better. Okay, that's gonna work. We're there. I'm going to put this tool in with a 45 degree, and I want to chamfer those sharp edges. So I can take it out of gear now. I know my threads are good. I'm going to take it out of gear. I'm going to speed this up. Okay. And then I'm just going to touch off here and just take that sharp corner off. That's all I'm doing. We're not getting too crazy, just a little teeny bit. That's good. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on the edge of the threads here. And then I like to check it with my finger and make sure there's nothing crazy there. If you guys aren't gun guys, this little indentation here is called a target crown. You don't want to mess that up because that can definitely screw up your accuracy. So it's feeling good. I'm just going to take my emery cloth here. I'm just going to touch this corner with just a little bit of a rough spot. Okay. Feels good. So now I'm going to go ahead and spray that with some brake cleaner. We'll blow that off. And I'll show you guys the finished product. Wipe the oil off of that. I always like to blow air down through the barrel because you could have some chips down there or some metal grit or something, and that would be catastrophic. So you want to make sure that, definitely want to make sure you clean it before you go shoot it. But I am happy. So there's what she looks like. We see our chamfered edges there. Okay. Now I can go hunting without, maybe. It's amateur hour over here. Just trying to screw this on. This is goodness. Alright guys, so I've got a little thread file here. I'm just trying to touch up these threads after I chamfered the end of the barrel, which is quite common. Alright, so I did have to touch up the edge of this with a small thread file. So a lot of times when you chamfer something, it rolls the edge on that, gives you a burr, and you just have to dress it up with a file. Looks like it's working okay. Boom. She's ready to put back together. That's gonna wrap this one up. I hope you guys got something out of that. It's a complicated process. I hope you guys understood what I was explaining and how I was explaining it. This is one of those things that takes some practice to get it down. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I realize that, but I figured there was probably quite a few viewers out there that have never seen something threaded on a lathe. And machining threads it can be quite challenging, but if you know what you're doing and you just take it slow, it's doable. So anyway, I thought you guys would think that was interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks as always for watching. See you on the next one. I figured there was probably quite a few viewers. I figured there was probably quite a few